45 meters deep off the coast of Cyprus, 800 luxury amphorae sit perfectly stacked, exactly as they were loaded in the 4th century BCE. The Mazzoto's ship didn't hit a reef or burn. It was dragged into the blackness so violently that the crew had zero time to deploy emergency anchors. We now know the fatal physics of its final moments, revealing a terrifying truth about ancient maritime greed. For decades, the story of the Mazzoto's ship was considered too ancient and physically inaccessible to fully understand. Resting well below the safe limits of standard scuba diving, the deep-water site defied early attempts to piece together its violent end. Because the primary sources lay under 45 meters of crushing pressure, the human terror of its final voyage was completely overlooked. It was written off as just another silent casualty of the sea. Before the silence began, the Mazzoto's ship was a vital, beating artery of Hellenistic wealth. In the middle of the 4th century BCE, a crew of working-class mariners prepared for what should have been a lucrative, highly orchestrated voyage. The final verified moment of their journey is captured in the physical sealing of their cargo in the North Aegean. Deep inside the jars, a thick black pine pitch lining was poured to protect the expensive vintage. The clay handles were firmly stamped with the insignias of wealthy merchants from the island of Chios. These nameless men were trusted with a staggering fortune. They navigated the sunlit waters of the Mediterranean, surrounded by the finest luxury goods the ancient world could produce. Their lives and livelihoods were tied entirely to the safe delivery of this fragile cargo. They had likely sailed these coastal routes a dozen times before without incident. But the perfect oval alignment of the jars resting on the seabed tells a much darker story. This ship didn't drift to the bottom in a storm. The physics of the mound prove it was dragged straight down like a stone. The collapse did not happen near the safety of the coast, nor did it offer the mercy of a long, drawn-out battle against a gathering storm. As the vessel navigated the open waters off the southern coast of Cyprus, something catastrophic occurred deep within the hull. In a ship loaded to its absolute physical limit, balance is a matter of life and death. A sudden swell, or a structural failure in the wooden racks holding the massive cargo, caused hundreds of heavy, liquid-filled amphorae to violently lurch to one side. The shift would have produced a deafening, terrifying crack of timber as the vessel's center of gravity snapped. The ancient wooden hull groaned under the sudden, immense stress. The vessel heeled over. The gunwales instantly dipped below the churning waves. Freezing water rushed in by the ton, compounding the unbearable shifting weight of the cargo. The sheer, unbroken density of the concentrated amphorae pile leaves no room for a prolonged fight against the elements. The moment the top-heavy cargo shifted, the ship inverted, giving the men less than 60 seconds to realize they were already dead. There was no time to launch a small boat. There was no time to signal the coast for help. The crew, trapped on the slanting deck or caught below in the collapsing labyrinth of clay jars, were pulled directly into the abyss. The temperature plummeted as they sank. The pressure squeezed the air from their lungs in a matter of seconds. In the blind, suffocating dark, the ship hit the seafloor with enough force to shatter its lower timbers. Yet the tightly packed cargo remained locked in its fatal configuration. The ocean surface simply closed over the plunging wreck, instantly erasing an entire crew and their king's ransom in absolute silence. The Mediterranean perfectly preserved the clay jars meant to be enjoyed by the rich, but it entirely erased the men who drowned in the dark trying to deliver them. After 2,400 years, the Mediterranean's specific salinity and oxygen levels have consumed every trace of human bone and splinter of upper decking, leaving only the terrifying silence of the cargo they died to protect. When marine archaeologists finally mapped the site with advanced photogrammetry, the physical record revealed an impossible crime scene. The central anchor detail that every theory must work around is the pristine, unscattered oval footprint of the 800 amphorae resting on the seabed. This perfect geometry proves mathematically that the ship did not break apart on the surface, nor did it drift as it sank. It plummeted entirely intact. Yet, the documented record contains a glaring contradiction. Early 2007 archaeological surveys confidently suggested the Mazoto ship was engaged in a direct, highly specialized, single commodity route from Chios. But later, excavation reports revealed a secondary hidden layer of amphorae from completely different regions, like Kos and Mende, packed secretly underneath. This contradiction remains permanently unresolved. It means the ship either secretly took on extra, unauthorized weight, or it was a localized trading vessel engaging in a dangerous multi-port hustle. In 1628, the Swedish warship Vasa sank merely 20 minutes into her maiden voyage because she was built top-heavy with too many bronze cannons for her narrow hull. Much like the Mazoto's wreck, the Vasa is a perfectly preserved monument to the fatal physics of overloading. It was a disaster where the sheer weight of a wealthy empire's ambition dragged its trapped crew directly to the bottom. We are left looking at a 14-meter debris field that shouldn't mathematically hold this much mass. But a closer mathematical analysis of the ship's estimated 14-meter dimensions reveals a chilling reality. To carry 800 full amphorae of this exact weight, this vessel was fatally overloaded by merchants who stayed safely ashore. The prevailing theory among maritime historians points to structural failure caused by compounding greed. Proponents of this view look at the hidden layer of secondary cargo from Kos and Mende. They argue that the crew was forced to maximize profit at every port, cramming every available inch of the hold beyond safe displacement limits. They believe the ancient wooden mortise and tenon joint simply gave way under the immense lateral pressure of 1,000 liquid-filled jars. But this theory struggles to explain why there is no massive debris field trailing behind the wreck. If the hull burst open on the surface, the buoyant cargo and timber should have scattered over miles before sinking. We will never know if the massive lead anchor found resting near the wreck was thrown in a desperate, screaming final second to right the ship, or if it was simply ripped from the plunging bow as they plummeted blindly into the dark. This final theory centers entirely on human desperation in the face of inevitable physics. Researchers focusing on the vessel's emergency equipment argue that as the overloaded ship began its violent roll, the crew realized their fatal error. From their perspective, making one final, doomed attempt to arrest the momentum was the only option. They scrambled over the shifting, crushing cargo to deploy the heaviest object they had to stabilize the bow. But the sheer speed of the sinking means no human could have successfully cut the thick ropes or dropped the iron in time. The anchor's position merely marks the exact spot where the violent plunge ripped the ship apart internally. It stands as a monument not to a deliberate action, but to a total, unrecoverable loss of control. The cold currents of the deep Mediterranean continue to wash over the unmoving clay, perfectly preserving a monument to a disaster that no one survived to record. The Chian amphora itself was designed to cradle and protect extreme luxury, but in the end, it became the crushing deadweight that murdered its protectors. It is a terrifying irony that the fragile vessels meant to serve these men completely outlasted them, entirely indifferent to the devastating cost of their preservation. The silence of those final 60 seconds and the erased names of the men who endured them is a weight that now belongs to you. If the crew of the Mazoto ship knew the vessel was mathematically overloaded before they ever left the harbor, do you think they sailed out of loyalty? Or because in the ancient world, saying no to a wealthy merchant was a death sentence anyway? This episode deliberately left open the mystery of the Parmeniskos amphora group, a highly specific anomalous cluster of jars found deep within the wreck that trace back to a completely unknown ancient trading syndicate. Eon Discoveries exists for the gaps the mainstream historical records sealed over. We track the lost voyages, specifically focusing on ancient vessels whose seabed wreckage completely contradicts their final port logs. If you left this video with more questions than you arrived with, that is the correct response. There is more evidence. Subscribe, and it will find you.